Fletcher was very good.
Dean Fletcher was very good.
I
Y'all know what?
Dough Balls this morning.
Dough Ball was good.
Dough Balls this morning.
Y'all know what this is?
It's a resistor radio.
It's got
It's
sound coming in from space or something.
I can hear that thing humming.
I guess it has to warm up. This is a 1952. I can't get the volume down. This is a 1952 Crosley radio built in Cincinnati, Ohio. It was the state of the art.
Is it AM only?
AM FM.
AM, FM?
It came with a super heterodome AF stage, 6 AM circuit, broadcast AC/DC 115 volt permanent magnet dynamic loudspeaker, bakelite case, model 1037 Crosley radio, table model with any space, color chartreuse and gold. This was state of the art in 1952.
It's pretty
Yes.
wild. Come a long way since
We've come a long ways.
Yeah, buddy.
How long has that been? 70 years?
70 years next year, or we're in this year. It is.
It is 22.
Yeah.
This was bakelite?
This was bakelite finish. This was a big thing. You know, these sell for $225 online. This was my great grandfather.
Really?
He cut hair. But
And you kept it. Your family.
my dad gave it to me, and when he was cleaning out his stuff, and I've just kept it. I keep it up there on the shelf.
I'm glad to hear you call it your stuff. My wife calls it something else. When I
Junk.
keep stuff like that. Well, she has another word for it.
Well, knowing your wife, it's a polite word.
Yes. Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Can you believe it's 2022 now?
It's unbelievable. The older I get, the quicker it goes. Every year. Every year.
Can you slow it down?
No. Nope. It's going to pass us all by. Older we get, the faster it gets. I believe that.
Well, one thing about it is there's nothing you can do about it, is there?
Yes, you can go out and make the most of every day.
That's right.
But you can't stop it, right?
Well, if you
Can't stop it, nor do we want to stop it. I mean, that's just part of life.
If you could stay in the third grade, would you stay in the third grade?
Lord, no. No. Because then I would never know my wife, never would have children. I mean, there's. I think your course of life has a purpose.
You remember the first day we met?
I do.
I bet you don't.
We met at Little Old Fort Restaurant. Was it, or I can't remember if it was you or your brother. I always get you guys mixed up, but it might have been.
Can you hear him
Community
good, Gwen?
Center. Community Center, the
Nope.
Boys Club.
You won't believe it. I was at North Lee School. I was in the third grade. My girlfriend was Camisa Griffith.
Oh. And Michelle was in my
And
class.
you were dating, I guess, wasn't she your girlfriend?
Michelle?
Yeah.
No, she was just a girl in my class.
Well, I remember you were sitting with her. We were in North Lee. I was in the third grade. You were probably 6 by then,
Probably.
6th grade or so. You were old. And we used to sit below y'all waiting for the bus in the gym.
Yeah. Road bus number 3.
Rode bus number 3. Well, you rode a different bus than I did.
I rode bus number 3 because we went through Tasso.
But you were always real nice to me, and that made me look, like I was okay in her eyes. And I never have forgot that.
Well,
Every time I see you, I think of that, and you don't even remember it.
I don't remember that, but it seemed like it was you or your brother I met at the Boys Club one time. But this was before North Lee. This is long before North Lee.
He wouldn't have gone to the boys' club.
Because it wasn't called the Boys and Girls Club then, it was just called the Boys
The
Club.
boys' club, yeah.
Because we spent a lot of time, my brothers and I spent a lot of time at the Boys Club and Community Center. After work, or after school, Mom was working at the warehouse.
Yeah. I spent a lot of time at the Boys Club and the Community Center.
Yeah.
But boy, things have changed. We would, like this radio, would we have ever thought that this radio would take a picture and send it to China in 30 seconds?
It's hard to believe that we've come.
I mean, if you used to hold this up and say, smile, they'd all think you was crazy, wouldn't they?
I still would.
Do you remember this, George, being a state-of-the-art thing?
Yes, I can remember when radios were state of the art, when they had FM, stereo FM came out, and you had your audio files. They wanted to get the best quality reception they could get.
So do you remember the transistor, I guess?
I had a handheld transistor radio. That was a big deal when I got one for a present. And I had it in my room at night. I think my parents probably knew I was doing it, but I wasn't supposed to. But I would turn it on at night and listen to music in the bed after I was supposed to go to bed.
Antenna?
Mine did not have a big antenna on it. Mine was just a small one. But I do remember that radio. It was a big deal when I got it.
Was it like this big?
It was not very big. It was like 2 packs of cigarettes or something.
What was it prior to that? I guess just record players?
You mean prior to radio?
Yeah, prior to transistor. The transistor was new technology to this, right?
Oh, you had tube radios, big tubes in them.
I've got one out there in the living room. It's a tube radio. You turn the dial, it has to warm up. I wonder why this don't work. I don't know. Maybe I didn't have it tuned right, but I guess it still works.
Well, it's 70 years old. It may.
That's the first time I turned it on in 20 years. But we've come all the way to cell phones, computers. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Technology is amazing, but I think in some cases it's made us lazy.
We take it for granted.
Yeah.
And what would we do if it ever failed us? How quickly could we go back?
I can't even turn this on.
I was in line at a store here the other day, and there was a gentleman in front of me. He was saying 7 times 7, and he got his phone out, and I thought, wow, my father would be so ashamed of me if I didn't know 7 times 7 was 49. I mean, but that's the change of society. We've grown so accustomed to pulling out our phone and just hitting 7 times 7 to give us that number instead of knowing what 7 times 7 is.
That's right. I see that as well. And people,
we've stopped thinking. It's become, we've gotten lazy, I think, and it's made our minds become a little lazy.
In 1930, would the people have been saying the same thing about the previous generation?
Well, I'm sure they probably did.
Would they say, "Well, he can't even ride a horse, or he can't
hitch a wagon.
He can't hitch a wagon."
Yeah. Well,
I guess.
I'll promise you that's the case. I think every generation before us has probably said that about the next generation, in some degree. Now, there's a lot of times I'll hear people talk about the new generation being lazy. I don't think they're lazy. Matter of fact, I think they're probably a generation of multitaskers that can multitask far better than my generation.
That's a good point.
I mean, they can operate 4 devices and still stay on task.
And chew gum.
Yeah. So
while they're doing it.
Yeah, but but they may not want to work 12 or 14 hours a day like my generation. I think they get their 8 hours in and they call it a day. You know, my father raised me basically saying, if you, the man that's going to get ahead is going to have to work more than 8 hours a day.
Your father, you mean Rabbit?
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, I remember him.
Yeah, my dad was a great man. I just lost him too early.
How old was he when he died, passed away?
Dad would have been 63 if he had lived to his next birthday. So he died when he was 62.
What year would that have been?
85. Super Bowl Sunday.
Super Bowl Sunday.
Super Bowl Sunday, January 20th, 1985.
Was he living in the barn?
He was living, he was living over there in White Oak Mountain, and the old Ben Hampton home.
Oh yeah, the guy that paints with lights.
The
or
old
something.
Collins place used to
Yeah.
be the old Collins farm.
Well,
I
that's a
think.
nice place, isn't it?
Yeah, but then Ben Hampton lived in the cabin where my brother lived actually, and Dad lived in the other house. Dad and Mom. They moved out there in 1982, I think.
Mm.
Things change fast, man.
They
Things
would
grow up fast.
They wouldn't believe the changes that we've seen.
Oh no. I think some of the changes will probably scare my dad. I mean, if he would just automatically appear, I think.
Was he still active in Tarver Distributing at that time?
I mean, when Dad got diagnosed with cancer, Mom got more involved in our business. She was already pretty involved, but had to take on additional responsibilities, and as we all did. But
You'd have
probably
been
his
what,
last year, he wasn't very much involved. His just health wouldn't allow him.
What would you have been, 22, 23?
Yeah, I was, and I think I still am, the youngest ever approved successor manager with Anheuser-Busch. And today, I was basically running a beer distributorship when I was 20. You can't even drink beer till you're 21 now. So if that puts it into some perspective, I was basically running.
You were distributing what you couldn't drink.
What? No, back then you was 18.
Oh.
Yeah, you could drink beer when you was 18 in the early 80s. That law changed and changed it to a 21 drinking age. So it's been that way ever since.
Do you remember, I guess when he was operating, they were operating with ledger sheets,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
maybe even handwriting?
That's all it was. That's exactly right. Hand ledgers, and you kept up with your beer loads and what you got in inventory, what you had going out to retail accounts. And the retail business then, you didn't have C-stores. Most were bars. And I remember a couple of our early convenience stores, and they were more like little family grocery. You had Cedar Lane Market there on South Lee Highway. I don't know if you remember Heavy Cook. And Dirt Key Market over on Dirt Key Road. Those were some of our earlier accounts back in the early 60s.
Was that a new thing, C-stores? Was that
yeah,
like
absolutely.
cutting edge?
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Because most of the beer was sold then across the bar, where you might have got it maybe a 6-pack to go or something.
What about Magic Market? That was that the
Market
first
was
one?
a huge one.
Was that the first
That was
one?
our first chain store. The
Prior
first
to
one was right there in Mouse Creek. Well, Mouse Creek, that's the Magic Market. Now it's Harry's.
Used to have bars on the windows.
Absolutely.
Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why they had bars
You
on
had
the windows.
McClary's. McClary's was right there on Keith Street.
Where
right
the
there,
gas
close to
station
well,
is.
it's close to where Posey's place is right now. Townhouse. It's crazy.
It's crazy. You remember, George, the ledger sheets, writing on the ledgers?
I didn't do a lot of writing on the ledgers, but I do well remember them.
Did you? But back then, how did you just? What carbon paper was the big thing, right?
Yes, when you were preparing documents, you would have to have your carbon paper, and then the secretaries and staff would get very upset if it slipped or didn't line up right because you wanted those copies to be just right.
Put it in the typewriter.
Right. They'd have to put it in the typewriter. Sometimes they had to adjust the pressure, and they'd get the ink on their fingers.
So that was a common thing.
Sure, you had a carbon copy.
Yeah, carbon copy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Remember they used to say in the movies, "Send me a carbon copy."
Right.
Exactly right.
But a lot of times we were trying to make triplicate or even 4 copies at a time. That's where you had to have the paper lined up just right. Make sure it went there.
Or it wouldn't hit the line.
Right, because if you had it was high technology to have a fill in the blank form and be able to line it up properly. So when you typed it, you came out with the original and 3 copies.
Now, prior to that, when they came out with carbon paper,
I think in the 30s, perhaps.
Yeah.
so it's been a while.
Oh yeah.
That's not a bit.
Perhaps even the 20s.
Whoever came up with that had to be smart.
That
Think
and
about
whiteout.
that.
And whiteout.
Whiteout, yeah.
Whiteout was your word processor.
You know, when I came in off the route, my last day on the route, I kept my ticket book, my route book, and it was a ticket book about this big. I still got it at my desk today. Yeah, and you had your original, you had your carbon, and then you had your yellow copy. And that's what we typically gave our retailers. It was all handwritten tickets.
And that was a document.
Absolutely.
I mean, that was
and you got the retailer to sign it, and that was a legal document of that bill of sale.
And now a legal document is what, George? DocuSign or something like that?
Yes, you have Electronic Signature Act.
So that's an actual act.
You have both state and federal, and then some international agreements that I don't know anything about really, but for transmitting and signing electronically.
Was there a time when they said, "Oh, this is not legal to sign electronically; it has to be in handwritten"?
Of course, there was a time like that.
So, but now it's. I bet I haven't signed a document on buying something or selling something in 3 years. Everything's DocuSign.
But you know, that's where sometimes you can be exposed to fraud too. You know,
In the DocuSign.
DocuSign, you know, even wiring money now. You know, someone, a lot of times when a wire transfer, you better call somebody, let them know just to verify the information you've received is accurate, and the party that's getting ready to receive it actually is the party that's supposed to receive it.
Well, that could be a mess.
Oh, absolutely.
Signing a beer document is not near as bad as signing a sales document where it's.
Depending on the size of the sale.
Is there a lot of stuff?
Could be a lot of beer.
That's right. Could be
You
a lot
call
of beer.
George and say, "Did y'all receive that?" You have to do all that.
If it's about beer, we certainly do.
It's something that important, you like beer.
Yeah, something. Beer's been around for what? How long? Since
Oh,
the
it goes back
didn't the Romans
early days.
invent it?
The
Early
Egyptians
days.
had beer before
Early
the
days.
Romans.
The
Absolutely.
Egyptians did.
Oh yes, it was.
Yeah.
Were the Egyptians here before the Egyptians were here before the Romans, right?
Yes, they well predated
The
the
monks,
Romans.
the monks made beer back centuries ago.
And
You know, when you hear the term, "Oh, he's a monk. He doesn't drink. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do that," but
They were some of the first originators of alcohol.
And
Yeah.
the beer was a lot of times safer than the water.
And beer was, you know, alcohol was not the same as we're enjoying today, or probably beer isn't either. But, you know, they say, historians say that's why the Mayflower stopped at Plymouth Rock, because they actually ran out of beer. You know, and beer.
and you're saying that is a fact.
That is a fact. But when they were traveling over, water, you couldn't carry water because water could spoil and get contaminated. Well, beer couldn't.
That's what I was about
And
to
beer,
point out.
of course, again, beer was not like beer is today. I mean, it was fermented water. I mean, beer is primarily water. And, but everybody drank beer back then. I mean, children and everybody for hydration, but it was done in You weren't sitting there drinking glass after glass after glass.
So it was like a low alcohol content.
Absolutely, yeah.
But beer is very little alcohol anyway. It's like,
Most of the time, it's most beers, most domestic beers, for example, are 5% or less. Now, the craft beers can now, or state of Tennessee, to consider a beer, it has to be 10.1% or less. But the craft beers have brought the alcohol levels, ABV levels, higher.
what is it above 10? Was it
It
classified
has
as?
to be classified as a spirit,
Oh,
and
spirit.
it's controlled by the ABC board and not by the local beer boards. So,
Why do they call them spirits?
well, I say spirits. It's just
I've heard that for years. Spirits.
yeah. But spirits is distilled. Any alcohol that's derived from distilling, like bourbon, vodka, that kind of thing. And of course, wine is not a distilled spirit. It's derived from fruit, though.
Fermented.
Fermented fruit. That's exactly right. And there's ways. I mean, all you have to have is sugars. I mean, people used to make alcohol from honey. Matter of fact, that's where the old terminology honeymoon.
No.
It was honey beer, and which anyway, that gets off in an old different.
I've never heard that.
Beer and alcohol has been around for centuries.
We can go buy you some mead
That's right.
What is mead?
It's alcohol
made from honey.
made from honey. That's exactly right.
Did the people drink that around here?
Oh, absolutely. If you go down to Mash and Hops sometimes.
Oh, they have
like,
mead?
They'll sell a mead, a craft.
I've never heard that.
Yeah.
It's just alcohol made from honey?
Yes. Rob's had mead on before down at Mash and Hops.
You can also go to the liquor store and buy a
Sure.
higher alcohol content mead, as a mead wine.
I've never heard of that.
Well, it was a favorite drink because you didn't have cane sugar, refined sugar. So you had honey when you were in, say, the Romans and the Greeks.
Mm-hmm. And the monks would make mead out of honey there too.
Beer.
Monks were one of the first brewmasters. I mean, really and truly, they didn't call them brewmasters then, but they produced various forms of alcohol.
What was a monk? I don't even
You'd
know
have
what a
to-
monk is.
They were, I guess they were considered like
So Monty
priest-
Python, they
the
had the
priests
monks.
or the preachers of today. You would consider the monks, and
Or
They
did
had-
they scribe? Or what was this? Was a monk the same as a scribe?
A scribe may be a monk, but monks were members of monasteries,
that's right.
of religious orders. Because you had, until later on in Western Europe and the Roman Empire split up, you had your Western and your Eastern division, and the monks were men who would dedicate themselves to join this religious order, typically for life, and they would have various duties within it. And you had a hierarchy of them. But one of them may be a scribe who wrote books. That's how a lot of books were preserved, because they would sit there. And it would be one place where one could go learn to read and write. But they would have jobs like making beer, because they didn't have refrigeration. One way of preserving grain and food was to convert it into alcohol.
Because alcohol was preserved.
It would preserve. It would last forever, but it would last longer than, say, just water would.
And honey would last. It was
Yeah, honey doesn't get bad, is my understanding.
Yeah, I've never heard of honey getting bad.
I've never heard of that. But getting back to the radio, I remember when the fax machine came out, and that was so bizarre.
What about the microwave? I
The-
remember
the
the
mic-
first microwave. My father, I was a kid at the house, and Dad had old Pontiac Bonneville, and it was loaded up with microwaves. And we didn't know what they were. It just looked like little bitty boxes. But he said, this is the latest thing, how to prepare food fast. And Dad, I guess he bought 30 of them. And he was taking them to everybody he had to experience a microwave oven.
Was
for the
he in
first time.
awe of that?
He just, Dad was a kid that grew up in the Depression, was poor, so poor he couldn't pay attention. But probably did without food a lot of times. If they wouldn't, Dad would tell me if it wasn't for a lady that lived 2 doors down, there were a lot of times they wouldn't even have food to eat in the house. So I think Dad had an appreciation for the latest and greatest things at that time, and if he could share it with people, I think that's what I think he really had a thing for sharing that kind of thing with other people that maybe either couldn't afford it or otherwise couldn't have experienced it.
Was Bill like your dad?
My brother Bill?
Yeah.
In some parts. I think we all, as children of our parents, I think we all pick up traits from our mothers and our fathers.
Are they born? Is those traits born in us or learned in us? What do you think,
Well,
George?
we could talk about that for
Yeah.
the program.
What do you think, George?
And you don't have enough time, but there's a geneticist, and D.O. Wilson died this past week, and he wrote about that. But I think most would say that it's both, D. It's not one. You can't say it's one or the other. They're not exclusive, because your genes have to be expressed in an environment, and the parents provide that environment.
But you can't take an environment and give it to you and you be like my dad. You got to have
That's the genetic part of it.
that's the genetic part
I think
of it.
there's
Yeah.
some things that's just in your DNA you get from your parents. And then I think sometimes as the people who are teaching you right from wrong, regardless if they're your parents or, my wife's adopted, for example. But I can tell you she's got a lot of her mom and dad's traits, and we just met her biological father here a few years ago. Never knew who he was, but I can tell by looking at him that he has some of her or
Can you
some
share
of his
that?
traits.
Can you share that story, or is it?
Oh, it's take forever, but it's almost like a little fairy tale. I told Holly she could write a bestseller if she just wrote a book about it. But she's adopted, and she just recently met her biological father, and got a great relationship with him, and he's now part of our family. And I'll never forget the first time we went to Florida. He lives in Cape Canaveral, Florida, and went down there to meet him for the first time. Of course, both Holly and RD were both on pins and needles, and I sat in the restaurant talking to him, and he caught me, staring at him several times, and but I told him, I said, you don't know it yet, but you've hit the lottery. Your daughter is a great gal. If she wasn't a good gal, I would have never married her. But there's nothing that you have that I need. So you've got a blank slate, and you can make this relationship whatever you want to make of it. Because there's, nothing you have I need. So I'm not after anything that you have. But,
Did you say it in a firm voice?
Absolutely. And then, of course, to try to cut things down a little bit after I said something very serious, he sort of caught me staring at him, and I said, look, I know you've caught me a couple times just staring at you. I said, I'm just trying to put blonde hair on you because he looks so much like Holly. But he was 70 years old, and I was trying to put blonde hair on him and boobs, and I said, well, I figure that's what my wife's going to look like at age 70. So, but they have such strong resemblance, and there's just no denying. Hit rewind. I was at a beer convention, and Holly had been looking for her father for quite some time, and through an investigator that knew her biological mother, he had disclosed who Artie was. So that's how this whole thing came about. I was traveling back from a convention, and this was after the tornado, and we were living in Avonwood subdivision. And I came in, and Holly handed me this photograph of RD. I'm looking at this photograph, and I said, "You found your father." It was just that quick, because it was that strong. I mean, he had it was a graduation photo. He was a senior in high school, but it just looked like Holly.
No question.
It wasn't he, but I had no hesitation. I said, "So you found your father?" And she said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, honey," I said, "there is no denying this man's your dad. There's no question in my mind." And she said, "Well, I'm gonna see if he'll do a DNA test." And I said, "Well, you can get it ordered and get it done, but," I said, "I can already tell you this is your dad." I said, "This guy, to me, he's a ringer. I mean, he can't run from that."
Yeah.
But
Well, that's true, isn't it? When you're related to somebody, you can't run
so
from
strong.
it.
But as far as Holly's parents, I've never seen. Of course, her father had already passed, but her mother's remarkable, and she's been very supportive of this whole thing, and has a good relationship with RD. And but I think her father, Bill Hayden, would have fell in love with RD too. I mean, he was just that kind of guy.
Is he like you in any way?
Her dad, you know, me and her father had and I told Holly the night that he passed away. We were at a convention.
Her real father.
Well, no, her adopted father.
Who are you
And I
more?
still call that her father.
Yeah.
I mean, RD's her biological father, and but the man who raised her, the way I look at it, is the father.
I see.
And it's no disrespect.
He's
to RD,
earned that,
and
hasn't he?
Absolutely, 100%. But I told Holly driving back from Atlanta when we got he was bad. He was not in good health, but we got news that he had passed, and I told Holly, I said, I'm gonna break something to you. I said, I don't want you to be upset with me. I said, but I fell in love with your father before I did you, and that's a true statement. Because he was a man's man,
Mm-hmm.
and he was rough and gruff, and a lot of people didn't know always how to take him, but he and I just hit it off just like that. Of course, my father had passed away in January. I started dating Holly that August, and I'd make every excuse in the world to go over and split wood. And
Where was he from? Where was he from? Was it Cleveland?
He's actually originally from Jacksonville, Florida.
Mm.
He moved up here when Bowaters
Oh.
paper mill opened in the late 50s. I mean, he was one of the guys in Power and Steam Division that opened the plant, started the plant. So he came up from Jacksonville, Florida.
Bowaters brought a lot of people in,
Oh,
hadn't
it's
A
huge.
lot of people.
A lot of people.
over the years.
No doubt about
I
it.
mean, think about it. What would Cleveland be without Bowaters? That's now Resolute. That's now leaving, right? Or
Well, no. I think they're just. I think.
now, see,
they're,
y'all are both on the industrial development board, so
Yes.
you're sworn to secrecy, right?
Well, that's a McMinn County. That's a McMinn County
Oh, you
industry
can talk about
official.
it.
But they're, from what I'm understanding, what I've read, Dee, is that they're cutting some jobs, or cutting all the jobs in their pulpwood division.
So
That's
they're
what I'm understanding.
so
Now,
they're still going to be doing.
Oh, they're still going to be
tissue.
operating. I think they're still going to be operating, but it's probably about maybe half the capacity they are right now.
When did Bowaters come here?
56, something like that.
Well-
56, I think.
I think they came here and started, if you talk about when they first came for the location, it was about 54, I think.
Yeah.
And
I think
then
they
they
started
had,
production 56, maybe.
right, I think that's more along the timeline, because it took a while to build that. They had to, they actually dredged the river so they get barges up there.
Yeah, because it wasn't deep enough, was it?
Part of it wasn't, but they dredged the channel in the river.
Mhm. They did.
So that was a big, big project.
Wonder why there? Just because they thought, well, this is strategically the location.
Well, most paper mills needed water,
That's right.
and it was obviously you had water right there with the Hiwassee River.
They just had to make it deeper. The bridge was high enough, I guess.
And they, every industry looks for a community that can support its employment base, and I'm sure that's probably another reason.
That's a whole nother level, isn't it? What you just said is a whole nother.
Oh, it's the biggest challenge we have facing everybody right now is to find skilled labor to run your business, your factory, your manufacturing company, your fast food service. I mean, it's our greatest challenge right now.
Yes, and I think it ties back into not being able to go into the supermarket and multiply 7 times 7.
Yep, that's exactly right.
And it's a big problem. And I don't know that.
But they know what 7 times 7 is.
Well,
I mean, they know.
I would hope that they do.
I think it has to do with
But you have
this.
to pull out. If you have to pull out your phone, 7 times 7.
I go back to. Go ahead, George.
If you don't exercise, you lose your physical abilities.
That's exactly right.
If
Your
you
mind.
don't exercise your mental abilities, you lose those. So you may have had something offered to you in school about math, but if you didn't grasp it and you don't see how you can apply it and you don't use it, you will lose it.
Give you a great example. Went to a fast food and it was $5.23. Well, I gave a 20 and 23 cents.
That confused them, didn't
Oh my God. It was just like, what are you trying to do to me? And I said, look, you just owe me $15. I said, give me $15 and we're good. He was just like, this guy was, I had shot a round so far over his head, I'd confused the crap out of him.
And if you look at
That's true, it's terrible.
if you look at the registers, they will have photos, little pictures of them, of the items, in case they can't read quick enough.
But I don't understand where it stopped. I remember getting up in school and you had to recite I remember writing 7 times 7, 49.
Well, indeed, it hasn't stopped for everybody. The world's getting divided between, you might say, those who know code and those who don't know code. Those who can continue to develop those skills.
But
And a lot of those people are leaving Cleveland. They're going to larger centers.
I'll give you something that maybe they probably don't even teach now. I'm sure there's probably FFA in some of the schools. For example.
I had FFA. I loved FFA.
And I was president of our FFA chapter when I was a sophomore.
In Charleston?
Yeah. And parliamentary procedure was one of the first things you learned in FFA. And I use it today in our board meetings with the industrial board and how to properly lead and guide a meeting, how to, someone pass a motion, second a motion, you vote on a motion. I don't know if kids today know anything about proper parliamentary procedure.
Not bragging, but I've never been able to say this, but I got a proficiency card in parliamentary procedure.
That's awesome.
In high school, and I was able to get us out of class because Herb Lackey couldn't trump what I was saying, and I outvoted him through the parliamentary procedure for us to get out of class. That's the truth. But anyway, I hadn't even heard about parliamentary procedure, except we use it all the time. If you told somebody now that was 14, 15 parliamentary procedure, they think he's talking about something overseas.
Somebody asked me, they said, where'd you learn that? And I said, I learned it at high school. And Mr. Fred Gregg ran our FFA department. But that was, that's just an example of I don't know if they teach that now or not. Auto mechanics. When we had always auto mechanics, we had shop. We learned how to weld.
Literally
absolutely.
weld.
And that was not a MIG welder.
No.
That was stick welding.
Yeah.
That thing would pop and
Pull down the
slag
lid.
all over you. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's just amazing how, if we could sit down and think about all the changes, even from this radio to the transistor to the fax machine. The fax machine was like this period. They jumped past that so fast. I tell you what, they were not even useful by the time I got one. Now I don't even know. Some people don't even have. Do you have a fax machine at your office?
Yes, we do. We use it for security reasons.
Yep. So I was getting ready to say, a lot of times people still use it for security reasons.
You mean you wire the money and then you faxed a confirmation or something?
We do it in multiple ways for a lot of reasons. Someone's always trying to rob us.
Yep.
Every day, every minute.
Fraud's a big thing.
You don't even know who they are, I guess, right?
No, and then we don't even know what country they're in. But we know they're there.
So they're trying to monitor this money going.
Yes, they're trying to
That's
monitor agents and individuals' emails, our emails. They look for keywords. And it's not a human doing it, it's a machine looking for keywords, key phrases. And they understand what real estate transactions are about wiring money. And they want to get into it. So we have a variety of procedures to try to prevent that.
You know, isn't it something you'd say 30 years ago, you'd say, or now you'd say, has he got a gun? No, he's got a computer.
That's right.
That would scare you more than the gun.
I don't think
They could probably rob you faster with a computer.
How can we keep up with it?
You know, I just think there's some security stops and some preventative measures that you take. You know, like George said, you know, multiple calls, multiple confirmations. You hate to be that way, and it's not that you don't trust the individual you're dealing with. You just got to make sure that's the individual you're dealing with.
You can't even take him the money. Maybe that'd be the safest way. I'll take it to him.
Well,
I'll drive to California.
if you got stopped with the cash, though, they'd seize it.
They'd seize it. That's right. They'd wonder why you had it. If you cashed it, they'd say, well,
you just go try to deposit $10,000 into your savings account. You're going to have to fill some report out, or someone there at the bank's going to fill a report.
and they'd really look at you a little funny.
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of. So, but if we can think about all of these things in the past at this high rate of speed, what's next?
Well, you can see that things will probably continue as they are in the future, but be a little bit different. And some things you can predict, I think, right now, that you're going to continue to see advances in computer speeds and in data processing. And you'll see competition between the U.S. and China that we have to do something about, or we're going to continue to fall behind, where we shifted too much of our reliance on a foreign country. I think you're going to see us try to develop our own. And you're seeing it right now in Texas with the $11 billion effort to build where we can make some chips. You know, right now you can't buy a car because we can't get chips from foreign countries. We shouldn't have our.
We become too reliant on foreign goods to do our own manufacturing. We used to be the country that used to produce things. We've got to return back to that. You know,
Why did it leave?
I think we gave
short-term thinking.
Short-term thinking.
Let me tell you about Capstar Bank. They're located in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, Etowah, and in Cleveland at 950 25th Street and 3855 North Ocoee Street. I've used them. I like them. Give them a try. They're no problem.
What do you mean by
Short-term.
short term?
Well, I think, you know, if we're going to fully return back to when our country was the producer for the rest of the world, I think what's happened to us, the other countries have caught up. India, China, other countries are now at the stage that we were or that we are now, and they're producing as much as we are at sometimes a lower cost. And what we fall victim to, U.S. manufacturers tend to go abroad to have things assembled, or we buy parts from because they're cheaper, and it's all about reducing the cost where it's more affordable. I can't say that it does or it doesn't. The quality goes down. I can't say that, but I just think sometimes the more we can purchase and support, made in America type thing. But it's hard because a lot of times, unfortunately, I'm not saying 100% of the time, I'm generalizing, but we have to be willing to pay more sometimes to get that red, white, and blue flag on the side of it.
There was one time this was sitting at a barber shop, cutting a man's hair in 1952 that was a veteran of the World War II.
My dad was right there with you, brother.
I mean, think about who this thing is played for.
Every part in this was made in the U.S.
Probably then.
Today, if you want to replace it, every part will be made in a foreign country.
Exactly
And
right.
at best, it would be assembled and distributed here. Or maybe have a few parts.
Or assembled as it's coming across the boat, right?
Well, regardless, the critical parts won't be made here. And you cannot have a viable country and be that way. The short-term aspect of it is, for short-term profits, we sacrificed a generation of people. We lost those skills and talents. And now we're seeing that we're going to pay for it. If you're going to be a consumer nation, you're putting yourself at the mercy of those who are the producing nations.
That's right.
In China,
It's almost a reversal.
Yes,
Role reversal.
in
That's
China,
right.
they have a top-down system where Xi Jinping tells everybody what they're going to do. And he can focus 1.4 billion people on production. And he has a labor force that we cannot compete with on price. They don't have that much choice about it. We have about 330 billion people, and we're not educating them to match the skills that are needed necessarily. And we haven't made it we haven't invested in the industrial base. They, in China, as a command economy, because ours is not that, they can direct money for a 40-year or 30-year project. It doesn't have to they don't have to report to shareholders next year. So they can take this long-term view that we want to build this industrial base, which is what they have done. And we're having to adjust how we're going to compete with that, how we're going to deal with it. Ours is much messier. And right now, with all our divisions we have, you can see Putin and you can see China both taking advantage of that. And we're going to have to do something about it. We've also changed from being the world's lender nation. After World War II, we were the country with the money. Everybody wanted U.S. dollars. And we have a reserve currency. And that gives us a great subsidy in the world. We run the risk now of becoming a debtor nation. And if we ever lose our reserve currency status, we're going to have another problem. And Putin and China would like to see us do that.
Yeah.
Really? Or is he just sort of that's the way it's playing out sort of thing?
Well, you can go to the Russian embassy website and read his manifesto about Novo Ukraine, where he views Ukraine as territory that should be part of Russia historically. Many people in the Ukraine speak Russian. In certain areas, they're predominantly Russian speakers. That's how they took over the eastern section so easily. That was a civil war. That's how he took over Crimea. And I would say the people in Crimea, when they voted wanting to be in Russia, they probably did want to be part of Russia. But we'd like to change how we do our long-term thinking and planning.
start healing. I think I've never seen our country more divided. And, you know, you go back, you mentioned World War II.
Yeah.
That was probably a period of time that our country was so united. And it didn't matter if you were a Republican, a Democrat. It really didn't matter what your political affiliation was. We were so proud to be Americans. And honestly, that's what I would wish for our country to see again, is everybody put down their political differences and find what, you know, we tend to talk too much about our differences instead of what we share in commonality. And that's what we should be focused on what we share together and not what separates us. But we tend to get in the conversation of what separates us all the time. And I think that works back into the hands of what George is talking about. You know, China and Russia love seeing our country
That's
where we're at right now.
But don't. But they're one man running the show, basically in both of their countries. You know, there's laying awake at night, worried to death. They got to be. They got to. I mean, China's got how many people that they say if you marched 4 at a time into the ocean, you'd never get them in there. I mean, that guy's got a real problem with population that we don't have.
My dad used to say it never. He lost a lot of his buddies in World War II, and he said, you know, he goes, I've never seen one of those guys when they were putting that toe tag on them, asked them if they were Republican or Democrat. They were American soldier.
You know what I remember that struck me is, and I've never heard anybody even mention it, but I remember when Bernie Sanders won the primary this last time, not this last time, but the time before, and he got up and gave it just an incredible, and I'm not Bernie Sanders' proponent, but he gave one of the best speeches I've heard about the United States and how the Democrats are against how we're working. Anyway, Trump gets up 30 minutes later, and he gives even a better speech about how America needs to pull together to fight against, not to fight against, but to compete. And I thought, it just only got better. So he really encapsulated what we need to do, which is back on. It goes back to the. I remember watching All in the Family. You remember All in the Family?
We used to watch it about every night.
Oh, yeah. Archie Bunker. He worked all day, and then he had a second job driving a cab. Yeah. He worked all day in the factory and worked all day, and he just wanted to come home and watch Walter Cronkite and maybe go fishing on weekends. They did away with Archie Bunker. He worked, and while he wasn't looking, they took him away. And I don't know what we're going to do without Archie Bunkers that are just wanting to work and stand up. I don't know. Or maybe we're wrong. Maybe we need to be more like these other people and not work the 14-hour weeks like you're saying, which is crazy.
I think there's a balance. I really, there's a sweet spot in everything. I think there was a lot in that generation my father was raised in. You know, I think that's how you were measured is your work ethic. You know, that's how a man was measured, how he provided for his family.
How would he have been today?
Dad would have been 100 years old if he lived August 1st.
So he was born.
No, he's born in 1922.
He saw the Depression.
He saw everything.
The war, Korea,
Oh, yeah.
Vietnam.
Saw it all. And Dad was a World War II veteran. He served in the Battle of the Bulge.
Was he originally from Cleveland?
Knoxville. Mom and Dad both were originally from Knoxville. He was in the beer business in Knoxville. But that's where he met my mother. We came to Cleveland not knowing a soul.
You remember coming here?
No. I was,
you were.
Well, my mom was 7 months pregnant with me when we first moved to Cleveland. And we started the beer distributorship.
That'd be a good bit, did
Yep.
Yeah.
And we lived in a basement efficiency off 20th Street, probably the first year and a half I was born.
North or south?
You know where right there on the edge of Lee University?
Mm-hmm.
We lived right there.
Mm.
Yeah, we lived right there in the basement efficiency. But didn't have a whole lot of money. We had a lot of. I tell my sons we learned how to eat potatoes all kind of ways. Ate potatoes at every meal, but you know I think that's what gives me the appreciation I have right now. What we used to sell in a year, we now sell in about 7 days.
Is
So
the profits
it's hard work.
more, or are they the same? Or are you having to do more work for the same
I think
amount?
there's more work, but you know the market has expanded from what it was in 1962. I mean, just look at Cleveland. I mean, Athens at that time was probably close to the same size as Cleveland,
They were.
really close, and it's not today. You know, and I think that goes to a lot of thinking people and people getting involved and being responsible with growth and where they set their vision, where they want what they want the city to become, and county to become.
But what's the next step as far as what we're talking about? Manufacturing. If you're a manufacturing company and you're going to say, okay, all right, I give up. I'm going to bring my manufacturing back to the United States. We've got more rules that they just almost can't even do it.
I will tell you this: vocational training. You know, something I've seen the last probably 5 years is the shift from what I call the conventional going to college and getting a degree in college, that 4 or 6 year degree. People are now going in to learning a trade, going into vocational training, becoming a certified welder or, you know, maybe a diesel mechanic, maybe a CDL driver. And they're going right into the workplace. But they're learning a trade, whether it's being a carpenter, electrician, HVAC. I mean, there's all kind of things that manufacturers and employers need skilled labor. And I think that shift is filling some of that void.
Dee, I had a manufacturer client talk to me about his business. He said, the machine I put this individual on to operate cost well over $1 million, and that did not include the installation of the machine. Parts that he is going to be manufacturing go into medical devices, and if they're not made just right, it could kill someone. I have to have someone who will pay attention, who can read technical language and operate this machine with great skill and care and produce the product right and can recognize if something's not going right. And that takes not just one skill, but a variety of skills. It takes the technical skills of operating the machine. It also takes the intellectual skills of being able to see it in a bigger picture and to understand, I need to stop a minute, or I need to adjust something, or this isn't quite right. And they also, it's part of a business, it's part of a process, they have to get along with other people. So you've got a variety of skills they have to have.
Some people say that if we finally get the manufacturing out of the United States, that we'll be ahead. And I'm not exactly sure what they make about that.
No. If anything, we have to start producing and manufacturing more here and become less dependent on foreign countries.
Ask that person to go buy a new car,
That's right.
with particularly one that's made to their specifications, special order. See how long it takes them to get it.
Are we talking about stuff are we a bunch of old people that are talking about stuff that's not even going to happen? Is what we're talking about, is it now going to be Bitcoin and just a whole nother thing that we haven't even thought of?
You know, cryptocurrency, I mean, if you go online right now, they'll give you multiple ways to pay at the end of your transaction. You know.
Yeah, I don't understand that. It's over. Is that? Can you figure, George? You probably understand it. What I mean, when you go to pay, you say,
I just want to give them my credit card and be done, or
Do
I'll
they
send
ask
them a
you-
personal check.
I heard Elon Musk will take. Here we're talking about radios, pictures, and welders. The rest of the world is talking about Tesla, Elon Musk, and do they want to pay with cash or crypto? Are we behind?
I'm behind. If I've never paid anything with cryptocurrency. I either give them my credit card or I write them a personal check. I mean, I still balance my checkbook.
I do too.
Every month I balance my checkbook. My kids make fun of me.
I do it once a week.
I
Yeah.
think
That's how crazy I am.
I think the publicity.
Well, I keep it balanced. When I'm talking about, when I get my statement in, I'm looking at my statement, make sure everything is exactly what I've been doing every time I write a check. I mean, I balance my checkbook every time I write a check or I make a deposit.
Where did you learn that? Because you're an extremely organized person.
If you came and looked at my office, you'd probably disagree with that.
I've been to your office, and I don't
everybody in my
disagree.
office, I mean, my office is a disgrace. I mean, I've got the most disheveled-looking office probably in the history of Cleveland.
I've been
but-
to your office, and
but-
it's very organized.
Well,
So don't
but
kid
I'm talking
us.
about my office.
I've been to your office.
It's terrible. It's terrible. But with my accounts, that's where I'm very organized. You know, that's where I am very organized. But everything else, I mean, I know where everything is in my office. Everything. I can put my hand on it if you ask me to find something, but it may be in a stack of papers, and I'm bad about floor filing.
I love floor filing. You
I
can see
do.
that here.
I'm a big floor filer.
What else you gonna do with it? Nobody's walking there.
Well, the kids say, if you haven't looked at it in 3 weeks, throw it away, Dad.
Do you floor file, George?
Yes.
You know, we've created a whole term, floor file. You know who I got that from? John Edgar Brown III. He'd have stacks, and he knew where every stack was.
He had legal monuments
Sure.
of papers.
Yeah.
George, what do you think is going to happen with this cryptocurrency? Explain to us what it even means, because I don't even know what it means.
Well,
I won't listen here because I'm gonna learn.
I mean,
here
I
what
mean,
is
it's way
cryptocurrency,
beyond
George.
my head.
my short explanation is that I don't know, and I can verify my ignorance about it. My son, when he first came out, tried to explain it to me, and he became a crypto miner when it first came out. And he made a few crypto coins, tokens. And when he could make, I think, $150 on them, I said, you better sell those while you can get the money now. And he sold them like 4 Bitcoins. And I said, you know, this stuff is going to collapse anytime. He got his $150, and now he reminds me about that periodically. That it was
I don't understand. Do you? I don't.
No.
I don't
You know,
understand.
And honestly, I really don't want to understand it.
But maybe we should.
Well,
We don't want to be the. We don't want to be the old guy that says, "I don't know how to get on YouTube." Do we?
Well, I know how to get on YouTube.
But some
But
people.
I don't know if I want to start
Some
changing my form of currency.
Some people tell me, they say, "Oh, they say, hey, where's your show?" I say, "YouTube." They say, "Oh, I don't know how to do that." I don't understand what they're thinking. So maybe this is what we're at about crypto.
Well, if you look at the size of the crypto market in relation to the size of the other markets, it's not as big as the publicity, you might say.
What even is it, George? I don't understand what it is.
Well, it involves called blockchain and scarcity value, and it is a mathematically self-imposed limitation, so that under the algorithm you can't have over a certain number of bitcoins issued. So you don't. I think they're thinking that will take out the risk of a government that doesn't stop its printing presses. So the more the government keeps printing money, because it's money that they mailed out, the PPP money and the extra extended wealth unemployment benefits and all this development money that we're getting, That money's just being printed somewhere. So what gives it its value? Its value is that people will continue to accept it. And right now we're seeing the results of too much money in the system. It's pushing up asset values all around. It's pushing up everything from real estate to the stock market.
Yeah.
What is?
All the money out there. These people that have money.
Over the last 4 years, a lot of wealth has been created.
Did you get any PPP money?
I did.
Yes, you did.
$20,833.
And so did about 20 billion probably went to Nigeria. There's other billions that went to other countries because they stole it from us.
Mm.
And then there was
Just what we was talking about,
what,
that wire
$1
fraud.
trillion that was put into our
SBA loans.
$1 trillion that was
God,
put into
that
our
was
system.
almost-
So all that money's being written out and it's buying things. So that's pushing up the price. That's monetary inflation. And you can have that as a stimulus. And if it increased production inconsistent with the amount of the demand, then things might level out. But how's the government paying for that? It's creating debt that the Treasury holds. And someday that bill's going to come due. And if interest rates ever go up on our debt, we could be in a situation where the biggest expense in our budget is just paying the interest on our debt. And we'll be locked in and burdened by the weight of that. We'll become like Argentina, more like Italy probably, where they're continually trying to struggle to balance things. And if we ever lose the ability to pay our bills to other countries in dollars, we'll really be in trouble if they won't take them.
Well, if they won't take them, we just won't pay them. Can you just do that?
Well,
I don't understand that.
Well, if you just don't pay them, right now you're having trouble getting a car. If you just can't pay China right now, where are you going to get all those products? You won't be able to go down and buy.
Well,
Go to Walmart
but
and
if I
tell me
buy
something that doesn't have products from China in it that we need.
But if I buy a car and it's made in China,
No,
I'm paying for it,
but you're paying for it with dollars.
right?
So the Chinese will say, well, we don't want U.S. dollars.
Well, I just won't buy the car.
All right, that's exactly right. That's what you'll do.
But you
You'll
may
do
be
without.
searching a long time for your car.
You won't buy a pair of shoes.
Possibly.
All right, so they have to accept our money at the value that we put at it.
No.
So the
it's
United
not the-
States
wait,
dollar
wait, you
is
made-
our own crypto coin. It's just based on a belief.
Well, In a
Well,
sense.
yeah. In a sense, yes.
There's no one blowing the whistle.
but you got a fundamental misstatement there. You said they have to accept our dollar at the rate we set on it. That's not how the rates are set. It's not that the U.S. government dictates to other countries, this is what our dollar's worth. We can't.
There's so much debt on that dollar's what's depreciated it too.
Now, how do they? But the American dollar was always strong, right?
No. I have in my office U.S. dollars that have printed on them that you can exchange them for Spanish silver currency, or Spanish silver coins, because the U.S. dollar had no value. It was a shaky dollar.
That gets over my head.
You talking about those silver certificates back in the day?
No, I'm talking about before that. But when we had our revolution, we monetized that debt by printing lots of paper money and finally got over it. So it's something you can overcome, but it's part of a debt cycle, Dee. And that goes way beyond what you typically talk about here. But it's something we have to deal with. It won't go away. Dee, let me put it this way. If a family goes out and they use their credit card and then they get offers for more credit cards, they get more credit cards and use those, they feel real good. But at some point they have to pay the bill.
That's right.
The bill hadn't fully come in yet.
They'll keep sending you plastic cards.
Mm.
They'll keep sending
And
plastic
maybe you can get new cards and they'll let you roll your old debt over onto the new card. And as long as you can get new cards, you keep rolling.
But sooner or later, you got to pay the piper. Got to pay the man.
So we need more manufacturing in the United States, right?
I think we have to make America stronger. We have to create more manufacturing jobs. We have to create more skilled labor. You know, we've got a great something new here in the county. It hasn't opened yet, but our pie center. It's going to be great. I mean, and honestly, I think it's going to be something that no one else has right now, and Tennessee may have the first one. And if we're successful, we should cookie cut these things across not only Tennessee, but across our country, where we can start training individuals out of high school to learn a trade and having a skill. And again, we get things back where, you know, that made in America, that symbol on the back of something means something. And every worker here that's made that, there's a sense of pride associated with that. That's the America our fathers grew up in. That's the America that I would love to see going back to.
It's taken us quite a few years to get into some difficulties, and it'll take us time to get out, and people need to realize that. And we will have to have a country that pulls together to do it.
We have to do it together. That's the big obstacle we've got to get past. There's so much division right now, and sometimes there's folks that really don't want that to happen because it's control and ego. Mm-hmm. They want to keep us divided.
If we talk about the past and the wrongs of the past all the time, we cannot go back and change that. All we can do is move forward. So we need to get off that focus. You may want to certainly remember the past and learn from the past so you won't repeat the past, so you can move forward.
Do you think that that in the future that robotics would even take over some of the workforce and you won't need these skilled workers? That's a thought too, isn't it?
I don't think robots will ever fully take over. We need automation for speed and production. There are certain things that robots just cannot do. They might be able to drive a beer truck. GPS might guide a beer truck down the road, but somebody's going to have to sit over in that passenger seat to unload it. For example, I'm using
yeah.
So I think, again, that's where technology comes in. Automation is just part of, but there's more jobs. Right now, there's more jobs than employees to fill them.
I've never seen anything like it.
I'm sure y'all have. There's more jobs. Look, when you can go to Hardee's or McDonald's, for example, and I know both those families here locally that run both of those fast food places. When those businesses offer no in-store dining, or they close at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, there's nothing, they're closed. That is a sign of our economy, our local economy, and I don't think it's any different than anywhere else. There's more vacancies than we have people to fill them.
They would be open if they had the workers.
We'd have workers, that's right. And I would love to see more incentives placed for workers. Let us give them an incentive to work instead of an incentive to stay home. Let's say I'm going to take, if you come to work for me, federal government's going to take less out of your payday to come to work. Your payday's going to get expanded because you're going to have to pay less taxes. That's what we should be doing right now, incentivizing workers to go to work instead of incentivizing them to stay on the couch.
And the only way to incentivize them not to stay on the couch is to pay them more to work than it is to stay on the couch.
Yeah, I don't even think wages have gone up several dollars an hour just from the time the pandemic started to where we're at today.
Do you think ever a period in life is, they say, the industrial age, the financial age, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Are we now approaching another thing like a, maybe medical, or like the 40s were when was the industrial age?
But when we,
It was after World War II,
Like 45 to
50s, 60s.
yeah.
we develop new technologies, and we have a lot of new technologies we're still just developing that we don't know where they'll take us. You in the bio area with bioengineering, with things like you had what was Dr. Jonathan Cornett on here. He was excellent.
Oh, yeah.
You should have him back.
Well, he was great, wasn't he?
He was great. You should have him back. But he could talk to you. But we're seeing right now some of the results of that with Moderna. But there are very few people who know what the M means for. When they talk about the Moderna mRNA vaccines, you won't find many individuals in our population who can explain to you what is the significance of that, how it works, and how it's different. Why it might be better than, say, Johnson & Johnson, how it's made.
Is Moderna different than Johnson & Johnson in the...
Well, the Moderna uses the RNA vaccine.
That's the one I got.
They're not putting, with Johnson & Johnson, they're putting part of the virus in you. With Moderna, they're putting a message into you. It's a section of genetic code of RNA, ribonucleic acid. And it has your cell code to make something that your body recognizes and produces an antibody against that will protect you against the COVID virus.
And in order to do that, it has to know the code, right? It has to know
they had to develop a lot of technology. It only took about 200 years to get there. But in about 1996, they developed some machinery technique with the PCR, polymerase chain reaction machinery.
PCR, they call it,
Yes,
right?
you'll see on there,
Yeah.
you'll have those abbreviation PCR. And that allows them to replicate the RNA. And then they had to develop the techniques to be able to attach it and to be able to read it and synthesize it. And those are all steps that took time. People talk about they don't understand this was new, it was quick. They're forgetting all the history that led up to this technology. And it had been developed before for the Zika virus, but it didn't end up having to be used there. So it was not a new technology. That is not correct information. And it cannot give you the virus because there's no virus going in you. It's just part of, it'd be like if you put a little section of computer code in that told your body, make an antibody.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't a vaccine in the sense that we've been taught, right? Like
it is a vaccine.
It is a
in the sense that we've been taught.
But it's more of a
taught.
But it's more of a, what do they call it, a prophylactic, I guess.
Well, no, it's a vaccine, because it activates your immune system.
But it's not putting the virus in you.
That's correct, which is a lot better than the older vaccines that had to put the virus in you. Some of the first polio vaccines that they gave to people actually gave people polio because they had to.
Yeah, that's right.
They had to weaken it.
Which might have been worse, right? I guess, I don't know. Maybe it's worse at putting the actual virus in them, right?
Well, you're not using the right terminology. You're not looking at it the right way. You're trying to.
It's like the flu.
This way.
It's like the flu.
Moderna was safer because you're not trying to get the live virus.
Right.
Where it's weak enough, it won't make you sick, but it's strong enough, it will give you, trigger your body to develop some immunity. But you need to have someone like Jonathan
Cornett, yeah.
Come on and give him about an hour.
What do you think will be the advances in that?
In that?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think there's anyone who can predict what the advances will be. There will be many. You can see one right now in going on in Tennessee, where they have treating a disease that causes bad some hemoglobin, but slipped the
I
name.
can't think of the name. I know it's the
Sickle
blood.
cell anemia.
Yeah.
Sickle cell anemia, and they have, when you're born, before you're born, you're producing fetal hemoglobin. After you're born, you switch to your adult hemoglobin. And if with sickle cell anemia, your adult hemoglobin is defective. So what they did is they switched the gene off that produces the adult and let the fetal hemoglobin continue to be produced, and it has given dramatic relief to the patients. That was something that was unavailable before. But you'll see many other types of technologies like that develop. But they'll have to test them. That's one. You're going to see changes in quantum computing. I don't think there'll be a question about that. And in fusion power development. I don't think there'll be any question that will be developed. It's just a matter of time and money with those. And
If we could see in the future, how much further will we come from this radio to the fax machine to now everything on my cell phone? I mean,
Your cell phone's a computer.
I mean, could we say,
I mean,
well, it's not going
to. Everything about it's your cell phone's a tracking device. It's a GPS. Right. It's a personal computer.
A level,
it's a camera,
a laser.
It's
you name it and it does it.
It can do it. That's exactly right. I mean, I looked at my phone and I use it a lot turkey hunting. I can tell the weather. I can tell the wind direction. I mean, it can tell me where I'm standing, how I'm facing. It's amazing.
It really tell your blood pressure, I guess.
It's got more power than what they had.
I don't know if it can tell my blood pressure, but
well, you can probably add. You can probably add an adapter.
You probably could put your thumb on it. It probably could tell you blood pressure. Probably oxygen level too. Probably.
Are we at the fax level? Are we right now at this radio level of what we're going to see? Is what's going to happen in 70 years.
It's probably good.
Because this guy could not imagine that.
Here's what I will say. I don't want to see technology slow down. What I would love to see is I go in a restaurant and I see a family of 4 or 6 at a table, and they're actually having a conversation, eating and having a verbal conversation with each other. I mean, you go to a restaurant, just look around, go to lunch, go to dinner, and look at the number of families that are on their cell phone devices. No one's talking to each other. No one's having a conversation. No one's asking them how their day's been or, hey, how was school today? That's some of the old school I would love to see interjected back into our society. You know, our kids, you know, I'm afraid we're going to teach a generation not how to verbally communicate. You know, if you tie down their thumbs, they couldn't communicate.
Will our technology control us, or will we?
We have to control our devices. And I want to continue to bring new technology and advances. But I think when it comes to our personal space, I think you have to set some guidelines. And we as parents have to set those guidelines. You know, I think
I don't know if we can have both. I mean, in 1920, there was a guy saying, I want kids to learn to pull a wagon, to hitch a wagon.
I've been watching Yellowstone. I've got on this binge series.
Well, everybody's watching it except me and George.
Well,
you watching it, George?
No, I'm not watching
unless you really want to start watching it, don't watch your first episode because I'm probably
What's so good about it?
You know,
is it Kevin Costner?
It's such a simplicity of what, you know, and it's still, it's portrayed like current times, but it's a huge ranch in Montana. And it's just the simplicity of the day and what went on. Of course, this family's fighting for their ranch, their properties.
What time period is it set in?
Well, I mean, it's now. It's set in today, but there's history involved, you know, when, you know, settlers moved out west and they moved the Indians out, there's part of the ranch that connects to the Indian reservation. I mean, it's a great story. If you're not watching it, I mean, that's what I've been doing this afternoon. But but anybody that's watched it will tell you it's a pretty cool series.
Can we go back? We can't. I don't know if we can go back to this. We're not going to get rid of the cell phone. We're not going to get rid of the microwaves.
I mean, those technologies are great. I mean, trust me, it's wonderful when I can go send out one email and I can tell everybody in my organization when our next meeting is or whatever it might be. Those are the advances. Those are some of the positives. But what I see where parents, again, and children, that family unit, that family dynamics, we're stepping away from that. And I think that's where we're missing it.
A lot of people don't even, the family unit born with the mother and father, the single mother is a very common thing now.
Well, it's common, but it's also common when you have both parents working. I mean, it's almost, when I was a kid, not a lot of, there wasn't that many women in the workforce.
Let me tell you about Gobbles Automotive. They're on North Lee Highway, just past Captain D's. They're family owned, they're family operated. My whole family uses it. They've stood the test of time. They will do you a good job. Give them a try. They're no problem.
Well, a latchkey kid is someone that, in my opinion, someone that was raised with their mother and father both working. You had to ride the bus home. You got off the bus. You got the key. You let yourself in, and you were in charge. You were by yourself till 5:30 or so for an hour or so. So that's what they call a latchkey kid. I don't know what.
No, I was probably that kid. Mom went to work. When she took us to school, she went to work with Dad. She kept the books at the office. She was always the one that picked us up from North Lee in the evenings, and she was always, we got breakfast.
Except when you rode the bus.
Well, and there were times that I did. Later on, we did ride the bus.
Yeah.
We found out there was a bus that rode in front of our house. There for a while, there wasn't a bus route. Mm. So, but when the bus started running here in front of the house, yeah, we jumped on that bus. I can recall a time we got off the bus one time in the early 70s. There was a tornado in Cleveland. I think it was like 72, 73 or something like that. And my brother was getting ready to fight a neighbor. And
Which one, Bill?
Or
Bob? Bob.
I think it might have been Bill and one of my neighbors. But anyway, Mom was hollering at us, telling us they were getting ready to get into it. Mom said, "Boys, get up here to this house right now. There's a tornado coming." So we were all dropping our books and running to the house. But,
got an excuse.
But no, I wasn't a latchkey. Mom was, we got fed breakfast and we got fed dinner, and Dad came home after work. He was normally really tired, but we always got around the dinner table and talked, and Mom always was willing to feed the kids down the street. And
where did y'all raise mostly?
When I was the house, well, the property where I live right now, we moved there when I was 2.
But how did you? This brings me up to this question. One of the greatest people I've ever known, Bobby Godfrey.
Yeah, Bobby Godfrey.
Can you show that, Gwen?
He was a good friend of mine. I can tell you a lot about Bobby Godfrey.
He was one of my best friends. Bobby Joe Godfrey. How'd you meet him?
The Godfreys lived in a house that my Uncle Ed and his family purchased.
Matt's dad.
Yeah, Matt's father, and they're on Candy's Lane.
I've been there, played
And-
pool there.
Yep, but Bobby's got a pretty expanded family. I mean, he's got brothers, and
Well, Paul drove me there.
that's right. So that's really where I knew those boys. I mean, I knew the boys before my Uncle Ed bought the place. We used to fish, and they were always, we always called it the house that looked like a barn.
Yeah, well, it was always
It was
called the
always-
house that looked like a.
Look
It was
like a
never
barn.
called the barn. It was always the house that looked like a barn.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
red too.
Yeah, yeah. But Bobby and his entire family was raised. They were all lived right there for a period of time, and he backed up against Candy's Creek and wildlife management area over there. And
I
he's
went.
just a great guy. I mean, had a servant's heart. There's no doubt about that.
This was the second largest funeral home Ralph Buckner Funeral Home ever had was Bobby Godfrey.
Well, I mean, he
I
died
thought
at
I
an early
knew.
age. He died at an early age, and Bobby knew everybody, and
He knew everybody.
he had an impact on people. One of my last times I saw him, he and George King were doing a big barbecue at a place, and we were drinking beer and eating barbecue. But
At George's place, or at his house, George's house.
George, well, we were at George used to do barbecue for people,
Oh.
and Bobby was sort of his sous chef, I guess, or drinking buddy or whatever, maybe. But they palled around a lot together.
I remember Bobby. I went to. I knew him my whole life, but he was a great. And the thing about the lady that hit him, when he was sawing the tree or something, he
Yeah,
wouldn't have.
a lot of people probably don't know how he got killed.
No, he was.
He was actually removing. There was a storm had gone through that evening, and he was actually sawing a tree out of the way of the road, and got struck. A young lady struck him by mistake and killed him.
He would not be mad at her, would he?
No,
Knowing Bobby.
absolutely no. And I think we all have a period of time we're going to be here. Dad used to call it a book. We all have our book. When, some of us have more chapters than others, and sort of already pre-written. And I think Bobby's book was written to end that particular night.
2 weeks before he got killed, I was at 58 Shortstop. It was about 9:30 at night, and I run into Bobby. What he was doing there, I'm not sure. And he said, "Hey, Dee," I won't tell you what he called me because he used to have this nickname for me. But he said, "Right up here to the boat dock with me." And so I rode up there with him. The next thing I know, we were out on a boat, and it was 2 a.m. It was a regular work night.
Sure.
My wife didn't know where I was at. Didn't have a cell phone back then.
He was a spontaneous
And had
guy.
no clue
Yeah.
that I needed to get back. And there was no need in me bringing it up. That was Bobby.
He was one of the more spontaneous people you'll come across, but one of the most giving. I mean, I said earlier, if Bobby had a nickel in his pocket and that's his last nickel, but if he felt like somebody needed it worse than him, he'd give them the nickel.
He didn't need any money. Bobby didn't need any money.
He was just. You won't find many people like Bobby Godfrey.
No, they don't.
And he had an impact on people too, and that's obviously why the folks showed up.
This is above
Pay
my.
the respect.
This is above my bathroom sink. That's how much I liked him.
Yeah.
But going back to education, here we got this. What do you call that? The Pie Center, where they're going to teach you to weld.
Partners in industry and education.
Now, George, your degree is in what, forestry,
Yes.
which is unusual.
Well, I could tell you some other people who have degrees in forestry. and they
What
don't-
was the thinking there?
Well, it was something I enjoyed. The classes didn't get up too early. I didn't have to write papers. wasn't like being in history or something.
They had the best looking girls in class.
They had no girls in class, I found out. And I enjoyed what I studied.
Why didn't you go into how did you get into law? I mean, because forestry is a big
Well,
jump.
At some point, you have to do something where you can make a little bit better living.
So you went into law?
Yeah. A lot of land I worked on at one time was owned by doctors and lawyers. More lawyers than doctors, really. And so
Did you ever work in the forestry industry?
briefly I did. I worked for ITT Ranier. I worked out of places like Ludowici, Georgia, and down in North Florida, Edith, Georgia, little places.
What was your job there?
I worked on the wood budget, and it was where you went out and they tried to project how much wood they were producing on the land and how that matched up to what they anticipated their demand would be.
Tree survey.
Tree
what-
survey.
I
It was a tree survey.
counted lots of trees.
That's right.
When did you say, I've had enough of this, I'm going to law school?
Well, it was just later on. I was not married, and if they needed somebody to go on short notice someplace like a small town like Benel, Florida, and stay in a little bitty motel, and then Friday say, well, next week we need you to be in this other little bitty town and stay in this little bitty motel. You have some time to think that, I don't want to do this forever. But I really enjoyed going outside and doing the work I did.
But your college degree was forestry,
Yeah,
and was that your major?
that was the major.
And then the minor was what? Was there a minor?
I didn't have a minor.
No.
I just,
But how did you take the jump to law? That's a big jump, isn't it?
it didn't seem to me to be a big jump to me. I mean, law's not especially, I took the LSAT test and I concluded after taking that lawyers don't know how to do add one and one, because if I remember, I did much better than I expected relative to the other people who took it in the math section. So it gave me a good score.
Did you have to go to another, like 2 more years of law, or did you just?
Well, you had to go to law school.
I mean, but you was in forestry. You graduated in forestry, then you went to law school.
Well, the day I took my last exam, and when I was an undergraduate, the next day I started work in Jessup, Georgia, the next morning, down on the Altamaha River. And I worked down there for a while.
Boy. Now, if you're a graduate today and you go to the Pie Center and you learn to weld, where are you going to go get a job?
They're everywhere. Everywhere. You can drive, you can go to the Pie Center. Wright Brothers, a big supporter of the Pie Center. You can learn how to drive. They got simulators now that teach you how to drive a heavy piece of equipment. Front end loader, scrape, big piece of equipment. And they got
That's right.
simulators to teach them how to do this. And it's like sitting in a big video game. We went up to the open house and I actually sat in one of them, and it's amazing what these kids today are learning early and building a career, deciding, hey, this is what I want to do. And they're getting credit hours and no college debt and going right into the workforce.
What about one of those scrapers cost?
Oh my gosh, you're talking probably over $1 million. Some of
Yes.
them.
And how much damage could you do with it if you didn't know what you were doing?
Oh, the liability that they undertake operating one of those pieces of equipment, because some of it has to be so precise.
And they have these little, look like flying saucers on them now.
It's all computer.
Mm-hmm.
It's all
Satellite.
satellite driven. They can go right down a property line and take a blade right down the property line and be so precise within, quarter of
Be as
inches.
good as Larry Godfrey. Speaking of Bobby, his
He
brother.
was a heavy equipment operator.
That's right.
Larry's still runs heavy equipment.
Yeah.
So, it's all, it goes back to training and filling that void skilled labor.
Because you're giving that young man who's, we're talking
Or
about.
young woman. I mean,
or
they've
young
got,
woman.
they've
That's
got,
right, the
they've
young-
got ladies operating
That's
piece of
exactly
equipment.
right. I apologize.
And the women are in the workforce now as much. And I mean, we hired last year. We hired our first female delivery, and she's a workhorse. I mean, she gets out there and she works hard, and I'm really proud to say that she works for our team. So it's a day and age, man.
You know, thinking of just something come to mind. These educational institutions, they have to really be looking forward at what's needed.
No question about it.
I've never thought of it that way, but they can't have classes and training on something that they don't forecast is going to be needed.
Well, you have to have a need, number one. Then you have to have the ability to fill the need. And the person that's filling the need has to have that desire to complete the task.
Yeah.
So, you really, you're providing an opportunity to someone that may not have otherwise have had the opportunity. Boys and Girls Club, for example, there's part of the PI Center that they're involved in that they're going to be training some kids.
On banking, isn't that right?
Well, it could be banking, it could be learning a trade, but it may be exposing them to an opportunity they wouldn't have otherwise.
I think exposure is the biggest thing, and
It's all about opportunity. It's doors. It's imagine a house, or imagine the opportunity being like a house with multiple front doors. You're just, maybe this door's opening up welding, this door's opening up heavy equipment, this door's opening up, wood skills, this one over here, HVAC, all these are trades. And these kids coming out of high school can learn, maybe they pick where their interests are. Something over in Germany when we went over to, I guess we were in courtship at the time with Wacker, and a group of us went over to talk to them in Burghausen in Germany. What we learned over there is they would take elementary age kids and they would sort of classify them where their strengths were, and they would start placing them where they would excel, not just keep trying to force a round cylinder in a square hole.
What they call it, aptitude test or something?
But it's sort of like, I guess that's what you could call it, but it's really taking kids that, every child, I think, has their strengths. And I think you have to find out what those strengths are and then categorize them to facilitate and to grow on their strengths where they can be successful and have some pride about what they're doing and what they're producing.
There would be no reason for a school to force me to go into medical because I have no desire for it.
Exactly.
It'd be a waste of my time and their money, et cetera, et cetera.
That's right. I had a parent one time, a buddy of mine, said, "Hey, I want to send my son up, talk to you, Ross." He said, I need someone other than myself to talk to him about what his future should be. And I said, well, be careful sending them to me because I think you may want to send them up to the university. They may not be what he wants to do. And if that's not what he wants to do, you're forcing him to go in a direction that's not going to produce anything for him. Matter of fact, he might even resent it. So why not just find out what his interests are and expand upon his interest?
How can you know what your interests are?
That's a good question.
It's communication. It's all about communication. It goes back to that family sitting around on their phones, or that family is having that conversation. It goes back to having that conversation. How are we going to ever know who our kids are, what their interest levels are, unless we're verbally having that communication? That conversation is so critical in the development of our children.
Like the Waltons? Remember, they would sit there at the table and they'd say, I mean, that
That's-
sounds corny, but
No.
that's what we're talking
No,
about here.
it's exactly what we're talking about. It's going back. I'm not saying after dinner time, you can go back, you're gaming or whatever you are doing on your cell phones. But I think there's that period of time that we need to sit down and have those conversations, and there's a big divide right there right now. Big divide. And as a parent, I mean, my boys are 31 and 29, but I'm talking about these kids that they're in their, they're in grammar school and stuff.
You've got till about their, 14, 15?
I think it starts earlier than that. I mean, I think you have to. I think it's so critical to have that communication early on, and there's no secrets. And they ask you a question, tell them the truth, no matter what it is. It's when we start lying to our kids because it fits the narrative. I think being honest is having that hard conversation. Sometimes it sets the course.
Being a parent is the hardest job, isn't it?
There's no question about it. And I used to, a lot of people try to, women that do stay home with their children. That's a job. I mean, that is a job.
That's a job.
Being a homemaker and being a caregiver, that's a tough job. It's a big responsibility. Big responsibility.
Do you remember back in the day at North Lee when they had what they call it, the ramble, what they call that, the North Lee ramp something, where they had the cakewalk and you threw the fish over the
festival, spring festival.
Spring Festival, yeah.
Yeah, spring festival.
You went to that?
All the time.
Did
You
you
had
ever
your
do
home rooms, and
you had the home rooms?
Every room would have a little different.
A theme.
Absolutely.
Remember Mr. Davis that had the snakes?
That was Mr. Price.
I thought it was Glenn.
No, it was Mr. Price had all the snakes. Had that big python or boa constrictor.
Yeah. Did you ever sneak out behind the ball field and go to swing on the vines?
There used to be big ditches up there, and we used to chase girls into the ditches. I remember that. We'd try to sneak a kiss or something.
See, we could put this on mic and we say, Ross chases the girls into the ditches.
I mean, the girls chased us too, and we were enjoying it.
Yeah, but you were taller than me. I had to chase them.
Well, we chased them, they chased us, we just chased each other. And it was fun. It was fun.
George, imagine in the future what's going to happen. Tell us something that may happen in technology that we have, because this guy didn't imagine this other stuff. If he'd have said, "Oh, you'll have telephones where you can take pictures and send it to China and it'll play music and check your blood pressure," we'd put him in jail. We'd put him in the funny farm.
Maybe.
Something in technology in the future.
Yeah, we can't be at the end. Are we at the fax machine stage?
Oh,
But you go back when you were a kid, you ever watched the Jetsons?
Oh yeah, yeah,
The Jetsons was sort of ahead of its time.
yeah. Meet George Jetson. Right?
I mean, there were things we were watching on a cartoon that actually became a reality.
They even had 3D printers. He'd punch that button and they'd.
Well, he had those little boxes that would produce food.
Mhm.
I mean, they were.
Was
sort of
was
ahead of
George
their time.
Jetson more advanced than Star Trek? I guess Star Trek. I don't know. No,
I wasn't a Star Trek guy.
you didn't watch
But
Star Trek.
but I wasn't a Star Wars guy either.
But you were more of a George Jetson.
I did watch George Jetson when I was a kid.
What was the dog's name? You'll get it in a minute.
Starts with a P.
Pluto.
Pluto.
And his boy Elroy.
Elroy.
Yeah.
My son, Elroy.
But George, tell us, is it going to be, our new RNA vaccine going to lead us the way to curing cancer?
well, I don't know if I can answer a question like that, Dee, but it will lead to things that we don't anticipate. I can say that. these different technologies will lead to things we don't anticipate because they're new tools. And we develop a tool, and then we sometimes find the use for it.
Like our ancestors came up with the axe. It was a new tool. They can do this thing now and that thing now.
Well, you developed a printing press, and
People still use the axe.
Still use the axe.
Still use the axe. Still use hammers.
that's right.
I mean, there's
Actually-
still things that we use today that we used back then.
And you still build different things with them than you built back
Exactly
then.
right.
You don't build log cabins with them. You build different houses. It's
Well-
the same hammer.
Will they get artificial intelligence? Will it?
They have artificial intelligence now to some extent. It's just how much it will develop.
Will I be able to have a friend that's an artificial robot?
Possibly.
Well,
Possibly. I mean, if you think about it, computer games have become that to some people.
yes,
Such as the metaverse. A lot of people are getting
that's right.
into that thinking
Yeah.
now,
I mean,
which is in the metaverse you could use crypto coin, I guess. I don't know.
But whatever, we cannot, would you agree that we can't sit here and think of all the advances, just like this guy couldn't have thought of all of it?
I can agree with that.
oh
Without
yeah,
question.
no doubt.
And so I don't know where it's going to go, but we wouldn't believe it.
well, again,
If we was to come back here 70 years from now and talk about it, say, well, boy, I didn't see that coming.
no, I think there's more coming. I think there's huge advances coming. I think what George said with the medical field. When you look at where cancer, I'll use cancer research. I mean, from when it was when my father was taking chemotherapy, what chemotherapy is today, it's huge.
Or open heart surgery.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good chance. My father would have probably lived longer than 2.5 years, possibly, if he was getting to experience the advances of cancer research and the medical treatment they have today.
It's convergence of technologies too.
Yeah.
You may have had to develop a microscope for the pathologist to look at the cancer cells, but in the past they didn't have the computer technology to help them
Scans.
classify it and to create the imaging. And so it's not just one technology; it's the technologies coming together that produce a multiple and magnifies the effects of what you can do. You can say.
I think the next 20 years is going to be more, not just in computers, but emergence, like George is saying, with the medical and technology on that end.
We'll see
And-
more. We'll see more developed in the next 15 years than we saw in the last 40.
In medical.
No doubt. about it.
So can they reverse aging?
You can, since you mentioned that, they
I mean,
have
people are living longer. I don't think we finally got that magic pill that people live 200 years.
Which would be absurd. That or
A guy that's sitting here playing this.
But there's more and more people living. More and more people are living to 100, which you never saw that. I mean, back in the Civil War and the Revolutionary time, I mean, a man might live to 40 or 50 years old.
Can you imagine? We've already outlived them by 20 years.
Dee, you have right now some individuals from some like Bezos and some people from Google who are investing in anti-aging. The Yakanama, it's a Japanese who developed the technique. It's named after him. He developed the technique, got a Nobel Prize for it, for restoring pluripotency to somatic cells. That is, they could go in different directions.
It's way over my head.
But they call it the Yokonomaka factors. But they're investing money in that and trying to develop it commercially.
reversing sales.
Well, it's not reversing sales so much. It's anti-aging. It's slowing down the aging process.
Not reversal.
It won't make you get younger, but it may keep you from continuing to age, you might say. But there is interest in that you're talking about. And they're hoping it's a time and money problem that they can figure out.
I mean, you can sort of say we've been doing that the last 200 years.
Well, in a sense, where you like you say, they lived to be, the average age was what, 30?
Well,
And now
30, 40 years old.
and now it's what, 84?
50, you were an old dude. 50.
Now it's 84. And you know, I don't think the 55-year-olds look as old as they used to, do you?
Oh, no.
Indeed.
At least in our opinion, right?
That's right.
The older I get, the more I think that, too.
You don't look that old. You could pass for, what could he pass for?
With my gray beard. Now, my kids like my gray beard.
I thought you
It definitely ages me a lot.
You could pass for 48, don't you think, George?
Oh, I thought he dyed his beard gray on purpose.
How did Bill have so much hair and you don't? Or do you?
You know.
I mean, nobody shaves their head that doesn't need to.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a little story behind when I shaved my head. I had a good friend, Steve Radman. You know, we can gig each other about our weight and our hair loss, so we don't take any offense to it. But I was actually signing the paperwork to the Bacher agreement, and it was on the front page of the banner. And the top of my head here was facing the wall. First call I get that evening, I'm sitting there reading the paper, and my friend, Mr. Radman, calls me. He says, "Tarver, dang, man, you're going bald."
That's all he could say after
And
that
I'd already
monumental.
told Holly, she used to cut my hair, and I said, because I kept saying, I said, you know, it keeps getting any thinner on top. I'm gonna shave my head. Well, wasn't about 2 days after that. I sit in our living room before the tornado hit, because it was about February of 11 or something. But I had got a razor in my hand. I said, "I'm ready to do this." And she said, Holly says, "I'm not shaving your head." And I went to my oldest son. I said, "You want to do the honors?" He said, "Oh, yeah." And he took that razor right down the center of my head, and that was the last time I had hair on my head. So, but I looked like a POW victim for the first 2-3 days. It was
Is it a lot easier to deal with it?
I mean, it's a lot of maintenance.
How
About every other day, you're shaving your head.
use a regular razor or what?
I use my wife and my son's got me it's called a pit bull razor. It's like an 4-prong electric razor you run on your head, but they also use a head blade. Depends on what function I'm going to, what I use. If I want it to really, really be super slick, I'll use the razor.
There's nothing I hate worse than shaving. I hate it.
Yeah, I use an electric razor on my face. It's not bad. It's not bad. But aging, you know, I tell people I'm pretty proud of every one of my wrinkles and every one of my gray hairs.
Let me tell you about Capstar Bank. They're located in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, Etowah, and in Cleveland at 950 25th Street and 3855 North Ocoee Street. I've used them. I like them. Give them a try. They're no problem.
You talk about aging, and you also have to remember Social Security was set up with the assumption that we wouldn't live past 65. When they set it up under Roosevelt. And that's part of the problems we have with balancing, having enough funds to pay the promised benefits.
That is a real problem. And a lot of people get to be 65 and they think, now do we think people are a lot more active than they were when they were 65, right?
Oh, yeah.
Say 50 years ago. Maybe that's the advance. In 50 years, maybe somebody my age won't look like me till their mid 70s.
How old are you?
I'm 50 something.
Come on now.
56, I guess, yeah.
Okay. You look great.
To you, you're 58, right?
But you don't
59.
have any ring. I mean, I don't see any wrinkles on you.
I
from
got
here.
glasses on. That's
Well,
why you start wearing glasses. I don't wear them because I can't see. I'm wearing so. But you know, let me ask you this. This is changing the subject. George, when you graduated, what was the big song on?
I don't know. I don't remember.
What was your?
You know, it was probably
How
the
about,
Commodores. Probably the Commodores.
how about Four
or
Seasons,
Foreigner,
1965?
Foreigner. I listened to a lot of Foreigner, a lot of Commodores.
Four Seasons.
Prince. You know,
Four Seasons.
Four Seasons.
1965. That song is I remember back in.
Yeah. I mean, you know, when I was a kid, y'all talking about radios. We never had radios. My brother had a garage band behind our house.
What'd he play?
He played Leonard Skinner.
What'd he play? The guitar?
Allman Brothers. You know,
He could always dance, couldn't he?
Well, now,
If
this,
he's
my,
what-
this is my brother David. It was my
Oh, I don't know
it was
him.
my brother from my dad's first marriage.
Oh, I don't know him.
Yeah,
I just know Bill
yeah.
and
No,
Ed
David.
and Bob.
Yeah, David was. I think he went a little while to Cleveland High School. He went to Charleston, but he was a rouster back in the day. But
More so than Bill.
David got in a lot of trouble. And that's why he's probably living at the house with us. But he had a garage band, and they played heavy metal and southern rock, and but I remember you know, a lot of Allman Brothers, Leonard Skinner, a lot of that. We made a lot of noise there in Tasso, or David did back in the day.
Were you never much a music guy, George?
Well, I listened to it, but I don't remember the names of what I listened to.
You don't remember like when you was getting out of high school and the music that was going on?
I didn't really pay that great deal of attention to it. I'm sorry. It wasn't a major priority with me.
What was it? More at school?
I suppose so.
See, music was always real popular. Later, when I in like high school,
Yeah, that's
I mean,
all it was.
We'd cruise Cleveland, cruise from the village, you know, what we call the Village Green right now,
Used to be
back down Keith
was
Street
that Tokens?
through 25th
They used to call
Street.
it Tokens.
Yeah, there was like a little amusement park, and they had the bowling alley downstairs. And it was an arcade. It was an
Bowling alley
arcade.
was a little bit rough, wasn't it?
You know, we always went to North Lee Lanes when I was a kid.
Play foosball there.
We played foosball. I got to be pretty good at foosball just from boys club.
You were
We
good at
had bumper
foosball at one
pool.
time.
I was good at, but I was
Yeah,
pretty
bumper
good at
pool and
foosball.
foosball and
Yeah, bumper pool.
yeah.
At the 4th Street YMCA.
Not the
Or the
Y.
community.
I wasn't a Y kid.
You was a community center.
I was community center and boys club. Yeah. Matter of fact, we played football. One of the first times I played football, Eddie Cartwright always likes to tell this story about me and his son Tim. We didn't have uniforms. And Dad, we had pants, and we were trying to figure out what we were going to do for uniforms. And Dad bought these. He had a bunch of these beer shirts, 3/4 sleeve beer shirts. Had all of us kids wearing beer shirts out there.
That didn't go over good, right? I don't
You know,
guess.
it was a different day. It was just a different day. That would go over like a lead balloon now. But, you know, we were just a bunch of going without kids and trying to scrap together what we could to make uniforms where we could play. And
I remember
the Red
waiting.
Straw Boys and the Blair Twins. And we, you know,
Triplets. Weren't
I
they the
remember-
triplets or
no,
the twins?
No, they're twins, I think. Had the Blair brothers, and we had oh gosh,
You remember my
Alfonso Martin. We had
Alfonso Martin,
That was
yeah.
at the community center. We played with Alfonso Martin.
You know, I remember waiting for the community center season to begin.
Bruce Whaley was the other guy I remember.
Remember the season? You waited for that season It was literally a season
Oh, yeah.
for football and for baseball.
Well, you did the Redneck Three. You played basketball, football, and baseball. You did all of them. And,
There was no overlapping. It didn't.
no,
Didn't
they were
exist.
three. We didn't have travel teams then.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no such thing as travel teams. You just played one sport and into the other one, or you were working. We always worked. In between the seasons, we worked
Where'd you work?
at the warehouse.
That's where.
There's always something to do, and Dad's motto was, if you were getting into trouble, you weren't busy enough.
Why'd they call him Rabbit?
That's something that he picked up, I think, in World War II. But Dad was a three-sport player in high school, and he could run. For a white guy, he could jump high and he could run fast. And when the story, what I can tell, it sort of carried from World War II, jumping in and out of foxholes.
Oh.
It's amazing how fast you can run when you're that scared.
They said there's no atheists. They said there's no atheists in the foxhole.
Like I said, Dad always said, they never ask questions if you're a Republican or a Democrat when they put that toe tag on you.
Or if you're black
just
or
a-
white,
you're
you just want somebody to help you.
Yeah, you're a soldier and you're an American soldier.
That experience really affected all of them who were in it.
Yep. You couldn't get my dad to talk much about it, but it was tough.
Were they more anti talking about it than the Vietnam veterans? I don't really know. George, you might know that.
You'd have to ask somebody. I never went off to war. I mean, my brother Bob was in the 101st Airborne Division. He was in the 1st Iraqi.
But nothing like Vietnam, I guess, right?
No,
I think it depends on the experience they had.
yeah.
Might have been different for each person, right?
I mean, when you sit there and you hold somebody and they're dying and they're crying out from their mother, I mean, man, that takes you in a whole nother.
And
That takes you to a whole nother level.
And 9 months later, they were graduating high school or something.
That's exactly right.
See, my father took me to a couple of movies when I was growing up. One was about, and that's about all the movies he ever took me to in my life.
2 of them.
And one was about Walter Cronkite in the 20th century, and it dealt with the concentration camps. And he wanted me to see that because he had gone into 3 of them. The last one he went into, the war was just about over, and he was almost killed.
So he was in there as a prisoner.
No. He went in, he was a medical doctor.
Oh.
So he went in, I suppose to try to render aid. He said he couldn't do anything for the people, but he wanted me to see what humans were capable of, is what he told me. In that movie, because he said you wouldn't believe it. And then he wanted me to go see Longest Day, the movie Longest Day about the landing in Normandy. And when he entered Europe, it was on June 6th, the morning, in the second wave at Omaha. And
They already cleared the beach by then.
And when he entered, they used the beach was supposed to have been bombed, and it didn't get bombed. And the troops in the second wave used the bodies of the men in the first wave for cover until
Golly.
the dead men.
Oh yeah.
And it was very bad. He
70 years ago.
lost all of his
Not
they lost all their medical
500
equipment.
years ago.
They lost all their medical equipment, so he couldn't do anything until he got the German fire from the.
It was important for you to see that movie, wasn't it?
It was important for me. He wanted me to see what, and he didn't talk about it that much, but he did. He went through that. And he talked a little bit about going there, and he talked a little bit about the Battle of the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge. About some civilians hit him and helped him and some other American soldiers survive, and he's pretty sure the Germans killed him later. So that made a big impression. And but he liked the Germans after he got home. He also had a very unique experience in that he was probably one of the very few American soldiers who also served in the Soviet Red Army. Because when the two armies met at a river. One of the big concerns was that they might start fighting. So the U.S. sent his field hospital across the river, and they were part of the Red Army for a brief while. He was very glad to come back. He treated Russian soldiers. He talked about their only anesthesia was like vodka. He did surgery like Civil War techniques with men with stick in their mouth and somebody holding them down while he worked on them.
You know, George, anytime somebody mentions George McCoin and his father, they always talk about how he basically gave away medical care.
Yes, he did. He really.
I mean, that was the thing for him.
If you didn't have
Like
the money,
we were talking
it didn't
earlier,
matter.
if your good deeds while you're here live far beyond after you're gone.
Isn't that bizarre?
And that's
What?
how you remain living, because your good deeds.
Hence, sitting at the bus stop with that girl, and you sitting with her sister, and you were just cordial.
Yeah.
I remember that today.
I mean, it's the small things that people remember.
We
It's not
don't
the
even
big
know
things.
what they are.
Nope. And you never know who's watching.
You never know who's watching.
I was always so scared to make a mistake or do something bad. My brothers might be watching me or something.
You remember back at North Lee, they used to sweep the floor, and they'd have people walk with that big broom, and then
Oh,
they'd
yeah.
turn around
I think
in
every
front
school had
of
that.
everybody.
It was
What was
red.
that?
It was that dust control. It made it shine, but they used to sprinkle it out, and then they would sweep it back and forth.
Yeah, and then if
Across
you was
the
in
gym.
trouble, you had to walk
You had to walk
down
around the
through there,
edges.
and
Or
while
North Lee,
everybody,
you had to walk around the edge.
While
walk
everybody
around
was
the red
watching.
edge.
can you smell the hamburger day at lunch there? Can you smell it right now?
What I remember smelling was the rolls, the bread, the bread rolls.
I don't remember that. I
always
remember
remember the
hamburger
smell
day.
of it. Yeah. There were certain lunches that were better than others, obviously.
Why was that?
I can't really tell you. I always looked forward to it's almost like a casserole. It's like a tuna casserole at North Lee. They made it. It was always pretty good.
You know, North Lee. It wasn't it was a little bit rough, wasn't it? Or am I remembering it wrong?
You know, I don't really remember it being rough. I mean, I always enjoyed all my teachers. I had, there were some teachers that I was more fond of than others, but for the most part, I mean, I still see Nancy Atchley. She was my English teacher.
But do you remember?
I hated English, but I loved her.
You remember fights in school?
Oh yeah, but they were, fights. Then you got in a fist fight and you got over it. You might have been fighting them earlier that week, and you were spending the night at their house the following weekend. I mean, that's just the way kids grew up. There
What
weren't
about-
nobody bringing guns to school or something like that. If you had a disagreement,
You fought.
You fought and you got over it.
Threw a chair at them. That was the biggest thing, right?
I never threw any chairs.
I never saw that either.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
Yeah, I didn't throw any chairs.
I saw a guy sleeping on the floor desk like this, and the guy walked up, picked up a chair, and wham!
Yeah.
Maybe you hung out with a different crowd than we did.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a little bit rough. What about you, George? You remember what did they do on weekends? Was it?
One of the worst fights I saw at North Lee was Todd Hedrick and Tim Harrison.
Tim Harrison,
Yeah.
Todd Hedrick. I remember him.
Todd. Well,
Didn't he get killed?
he did. But he used to pick on Tim. He bullied Tim around a lot. And, his parents ran the Cosmetology Spa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cosmetologist.
Or it was like it was a
Cosmetologist.
workout place.
Cosmetologist. Yeah, it used to be where AutoZone
Yes.
is.
Yeah. And
Cosmopolitan.
yeah, Cosmo. Yeah.
Yeah.
He, I guess he just had enough that day, and man, he went to boxing on poor old Todd Hedrick's ears and his face, and he had him knotted up in a matter of minutes. But that's what you did back then, and You get paddled, and you go home and you forget about it, and your buddies the next day.
But I'll say this: the modern school system is probably more in tune to bullying than it was back then.
Well,
Think about people that were bullied back then.
kids are cruel. Kids are cruel. They made fun of. Then it happens today. They make fun of kids that are maybe not very popular, or they don't have the latest trendy clothes, and
That goes on today. I got friends that
absolutely.
talk to me about that.
oh, absolutely.
Do
And
you
it's
think
terrible.
do you think it still bothers?
It's terrible. I think it impacts these kids, and
I think it is.
and I think
You think
know,
it impacts us at our age?
But I
Little bit?
I go back. It's what kids are taught. Having some kindness and care. That's not taught a lot.
You keep going back to
Kindness,
parenting.
Absolutely. I think parenting is what we got to get back to with our children. It's our
How are we going
foundation
to
of
do
our
that
country.
when they're taking 4 sports at night? They're going to tennis, basketball, baseball, not the redneck threes you're talking about. We're wearing them out trying to teach them.
Part of your parenting is making those decisions to
It's
answer
all
that
about-
question.
You got to create the balance. As a parent, you must create the balance and the boundaries. And the boundaries are so important. I mean, if we got in trouble, you're talking about going to fight in school. Well, if you got to fight in school, you're going to get in trouble when you get home. And a lot of times the trouble at home was worse than the fight at school. Trust me. And my mother, my father didn't spank us very much. It was my mother. But if you got in really bad trouble, it was Dad was handling it, and then you really overstepped the line. But
Why didn't y'all go to Bradley? Why did you just stay at?
where we lived.
You never went to Bradley, right? You went to Charleston, stayed there the whole time.
Most of my friends, when we left North Lee, because it was just that time when they had cut that. You didn't go to 8th grade,
That's right.
and we were in 7th grade, and I was going into the 8th, and you either had to go to Bradley Junior or Cleveland Junior, and we made the decision to just go to Charleston. That's what we did.
You remember David Pell?
There were a few of us that went to Charleston. Robert Torbett, one of them I can remember.
Robert Torbett. That's the painter?
Painter, yeah.
Painter. Well, he's a good guy. Isn't
Yep, he's a great guy.
he? Yeah.
He's a very successful painter.
Yeah. Good guy.
Yeah.
What about David Pelley? Do you remember him?
Oh yeah, David had a brother,
Derek?
Derek. Yep, sure did.
David's a big retired.
I think Derek was in my brother Ed's class, and
I was in Ed's class,
okay, and
but
then
not
Bill,
at Charleston.
And then Bill was in David's. I was older than all
Yeah.
those boys.
David's some kind of big army guy, retired.
Some kind of
He posts every day at sunrise at somewhere
Yeah.
where you're not having to work.
good for him.
George, do you think that the future of Cleveland is going to be better with more progressive with somebody like Bo Waters leaving, or do you think it's going to be?
Well, Bowater is now resolute.
Resolute? Yeah, Resolute. I keep calling it Bo
That's
Water.
right. That's all right.
But everybody
And
does.
Yeah.
I think Ross tried to point out they cut out part of their pulp mill.
Yeah.
But
There's still gonna be an operation.
they're still in operation. They're making a different product. They're making tissue type paper, I think.
But they're laying off 350 people, right?
They're
And
laying
what
off
the-
350 people because that part of they can't compete with imported paper.
back to what you were saying.
But the individuals that are there, there's jobs, there's opportunities for them to move into something else.
I don't know if there are with that company now.
I don't think. Again, I don't know how many they're trying to retrain or retool in this, maybe other departments, but I'm sure there are going to be individuals that will leave Resolute and go to work somewhere else. Canon Automotive, our newest tenant in the industrial park, for example, those are good, high wage paying jobs that, you know, can
Somebody,
absorb some of that.
And we lost one paper wood product company, Resolute. They're cutting back,
Probably 6 or 8 others.
but we gained Triumph sheets. If you want to buy a big piece of cardboard or a specialty piece of cardboard, and you want the biggest piece they can make in
They're the largest corrugated supplier.
where is Triumph Sheets? 20th Street? No.
You know where the it's on
off Old Tasso,
Old Tasso. I was going to say Urbane, but
down past old Coppinger's building.
Now y'all are
used
both
to be
on
the old Frontier building.
the old Frontier. That's right. Yeah.
They used to lease space.
Yeah.
To,
Frontier. I remember that.
Maytag. Yep,
That was for that period.
that's right. Yep.
Do y'all remember? Y'all are both on the Industrial Development Board, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So
Ross
there's
was
stuff.
president.
So there's stuff y'all know that you can't tell us.
How big?
That would be correct.
And Ross knows things that I don't know. He's been our president since we started.
17,
I'm going to bet
17
that. I'm
years.
going to bet
Chairman-
George that
Chairman,
is
17
not
years.
true.
Well, I'm going to bet it is true because if I don't know, I can't be the one who leaked it out.
Is George not one of the smartest people there is, bar none?
I brag on George McCoin all the time. I brag on him all the time. We're very fortunate in this community to have George serving on the industrial board. There's no question about it. He brings a level of expertise, particularly in his field when we're discussing certain things and having that guidance there. You can't measure that.
When you talk about you mentioned earlier, somebody's a man's man. Whatever the level above that is George McCoin.
You know, I think we outlive our existence here far after we're gone. And I think good deeds live far past your being here.
What else is there? I don't know, do you?
Got to give it back.
Somebody built a foundation for us. It took them a long time, for us to be here.
You know, it takes us to where this age to realize, oh, I see now what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be helping that other guy that's at the bus stop.
That's right.
You know, it's if you're providing a job, get this, if you provide a job for somebody, man or woman, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, it doesn't matter. We're Americans. You're providing opportunity and hope. Sometimes that's all you need to give people is hope and opportunity. And if you can give that to them, then it's up to them to take that bull by the horns and make the most of it. And that's the American dream.
And you have to make them aware that they can.
It's the American dream. That's what it's supposed to be all about.
They need to be aware of.
There's no limitations for any of us. It's what we make of our time while we're here.
That could almost be another subject as far as do we somehow can we create our own reality?
I don't think there's any question about that.
You know, we got the power of positive thinking. We got the people that
It's all
people
about
that
your
pray
attitude.
seem to do better, right?
I think it's about a person's attitude and how they approach things.
Who was it? Shakespeare that said, I think it was Shakespeare, says, nothing's neither bad nor good, but thinking makes it so.
An attitude, your thinking and your attitude, absolutely your approach, your willingness to adapt, and you have to go into things humble, like you're willing to learn. You know, if you go into anything, like you know everything, you're your own self's biggest obstacle, because you can't learn unless you want to learn. You want to be.
But you can't spend all your time learning. You got to move forward, right?
I learn something every day, Dee. Every day you learn something, and sometimes you may learn it from the person you wouldn't think you would learn from.
Well, ain't that the truth?
You learn something every day. If you think about it, if you're really open to it, you can learn something every day.
If you pay attention.
Yeah,
Everybody you meet may be an opportunity.
absolutely.
What is it they'll saying? Everybody's your superior in some area.
You're never going to be, there's always going to be someone smarter than you in a certain field.
That's,
Always.
When you wake up in the morning, are you saying charge
No
or
doubt.
maintain?
No, charge. No doubt. I'm a much better puncher than a defender. I'd rather be the guy throwing punches, the ones taking blocks. Yeah, and that's the way I always have been.
You agree with that, George?
no, yes.
Thanks for coming.
There's nothing makes you learn how to block with